Hello there everyone and welcome to John Drinks channel where I, John, have a drink and I still have my groovy Halloween setup because we're not quite done yet for the season. So, story time. There was a flood. Not here, but there was a flood at a whiskey shop and it was called the Really Good Whisky Company. And as the name implies, they're quite good and they sell whiskey. I don't know if they're really good and they also sell whiskey, or they're really good at selling whiskey, or a little bit of both. I'm not sure. I don't think I've really traded with these guys before. But I'm a sucker for a charitable cause that involves alcohol. Take note, charities. And they had a bad start to 2021. They flooded bad. And a lot of their stock was either severely damaged or outright destroyed. So they decided, in an effort to try and recoup some of their losses, that they would hold a raffle for a lot of the stock that was badly damaged, that was still sellable, but was, no longer in the best condition. So the idea was you'd drop, I think you paid 50 quid, and you had the chance of either, making that back in whiskey that was, if not worth £50, then they'd drop you in some samples to make up the difference of the cost, or potentially get something way above that. And there were some gems to be had, that they were selling off. So I thought, why not? Let's have a punt. It's like a whiskey lottery. It's a bit of fun, and it's a bit of a lucky dip. Why not? Let's have a bit of fun. And I got. You ready for this? A Glenturret. An old Glenturret. You'll notice that from the dumpy bottle, because I do... Oh, it's just slightly out of reach. Hold on. Oh, why did I not think this through? That's the new Glenturret. I recently finished this bottle. This was glorious liquid. It really, really was. I got this off of... he didn't personally recommend it to me. He recommended it to a lot of people. Roy over at Aquavitae. He's like me, only significantly better. I challenge anyone to disagree with that, to be fair. And he was bigging this up, and I'd had my eye on it, and I was thinking, like, big chunky bottle. It looks sexy, but is it going to be worth it? It was. It's not cheap, and I think a big chunk of that is this big bloody bottle. If they offered a refill service in the vein of like Glaswegian or something like that, I would very happily, take this along and get it refilled. But as they don't, it's a shame as well, because it's a proper decanter. It's solid. This thing's absolutely solid. But we're not looking at that. We're looking at this. Now this. As soon as I opened the box, I was like, that's about 43 quid's worth of whiskey. They have also given me a sample, so I didn't win, if that makes sense. I did not get something that was like, way and above its value. But even so, it's interesting. And as I mentioned, I think fairly recently in one of the videos, and have shown as well, I like peated expressions of typically not peated whiskey. And this is one example. This is a peated edition. It's batch 3 of the Glenturret before they decided to go all mega fancy. I think they were still operating as like the famous grouse experience and stuff like that. And there's some McGubbins, which I'm going to read for posterity, because obviously it's changed. Yes, it has. By quite a different message, actually. So we'll go with this. We rely on skills passed from generation to generation to get our process just right. We've done things exactly the same way since Robert Burns was in his teens. We're craft distillers. Only 5 pairs of trusted hands are used to make our whiskey. Tradition reigns supreme at Glenturret. 50 years after establishing Glenturret, the Drummonds made an agreement with Sir Patrick Murray, owner of the... Octotire Estates that confirmed their right to extract water and dig peat for the purposes of distilling. The malted barley would have been dried over fires fueled by peat, imparting a smokiness to the new make spirit. They're not saying that's what they've done in this example, it's just saying that's what used to be done. Which, I suppose if you're not paying attention, you might not notice. 43%, and I do believe the older editions are coloured and chill filtered, but I'd need to do some research on that. I'm keen to give this a go. Because the Glenturret 12 really opened my eyes to Glenturret. I did want to try the older Glenturrets, and then they did their big revival, and I'm really happy with the stuff that they're making now. But I never got to try the old stuff, and apparently it's got a curious signature to it. So I'm actually keen to try this. Should I have opened this? Yeah, I mean, we're here now, aren't we? So, let's have big old glug. Yes. Pop that down, pop the cork back on there. I also do, I do kind of like the old design, you know, it's a dumpy bottle, it's got the copper at the top. I mean, it can't hold a fucking candle to that, obviously, but you know, it's still a nice, you know, it's a nice looking little bottle. And that's the little tag that came saying thank you for helping us with our flood. You're welcome. I got some whiskey out of it. Can't complain. So, it's a cute pale amber kind of a colour. Woo! If anyone's ever had smoked butter, it's rich, it's fatty, it's smoky, duh, but it does, it really has like a, if you just decide to like smell butter, it really does have that aroma. I often say that, like, you know, there's like a buttery mouthfeel, or there's like a dairy component to the flip, but this really is kind of like, hello, I'm motherfucking butter, how you doing? There's a touch of caramel, there's a little bit of, It's a little bit of like a dried fruit component. There's a little bit of nuts like walnuts. There is lashings of just smoked dairy, like smoked cheese, smoked butter. Smoke and dairy together at last in whiskey form. What more could you possibly want? It's quite an inviting nose, I'm not gonna lie. The smoke's dominating, but you'd kind of expect it, to be fair. You know, I think you'd be disappointed if it wasn't all-seeing and all-knowing in this. Yeah, I'm curious to see what we're dealing with here. The nose is quite simple. Smoked butter. More than anything else, you know, there's not... Maybe a little bit of caramel, a little bit of vanilla, but I mean, honestly, it is as it is, and it's happy to say that it is. So we'll move on to what the flavour is like and see if we get anything else out of it. Oh my giddy aunt, yes we did. Wow. White chocolate, caramel, smoke, duh. Kind of like a smoked, kind of like a salted caramel if you made it with smoked sea salt, which is a thing, and it is amazing. There's a bit of black pepper in there. There's like a rich fudge component, or maybe close to tablet, to be honest. So there's still kind of like that buttery component coming through with a sweetness and some smoke. And there's a little bit of fruit in there as well. There's like an element of like figs and raisins. I don't know if there's a sherry influence off of this. It's really not very forthcoming with information. I tend to go surface level with a lot of this stuff. I just spotted something of interest there, but we'll come back to it in a second. Dried figs, raisins, walnut, black pepper again, smoke, caramel, fudge, a little bit of milk chocolate. It's very inviting, I've got to say. There's plenty going on. A little bit of like a chili heat prickle towards the back, but it's very nice. It is, it's very pleasant. I'm going to pop some water in this in a second, but first I want to quickly talk about something that I noticed. So on the copy for the new version, it talks about it being the oldest distillery and stuff like that, whereas on the old one it's talking about tradition. And I just thought I'd have a quick look, and indeed, they've changed the dates. The older version has a big embossed 1775, whereas the new one has a ribbon saying 1763. Now, is this just a fanny craddock where they're lying about their age? Or is there something else going on here where they're going off of an earlier date that mentions distilling on the land but not the distillery by name? I'm not quite sure. But it can't be both. I don't know enough about the history of Glenturret about this. I mean, you know, they're both in the 1700s, but why would you even do that, to be fair? Because, I mean, you know, if I see 1775, I'm like, oh, that's old. 1763, they really are leaning into oldest working distillery on this one. So did they need it to be earlier? Is that a lie? Is it creative? I don't know. Somebody let me know down in the comments, because I'm sure somebody out there does know. And it's probably not as nefarious as I'm making it out to be, but it is suspicious. You have to admit that when you first see that. If you don't necessarily know and you have them side by side, you're kind of like, one of these things is not like the other. But back to the whiskey. I'm going to pop some water in this. Going to see what happens. There's still plenty of like smoked cheese, dairy and smoke together. Wonderful. If anyone's ever had candied walnuts, A, they're amazing, but B, they smell a bit like this. Sugar and walnuts. Seriously, try making those at some point. They are simple, but delightful. It's giving way to a bit more of a fresh nose now that I've added water as well. There's more of a eucalyptus and celery kind of a thing going on. It's a little chlorophyll-y. There's an eking of lemon oil wanting to try and fight through. I wouldn't say it's heavy on the citrus. It kind of wants to be there, but it's real background note. Smoke's a little mellower, which isn't a bad thing. It's kind of like a distant bonfire that you're eating sugared walnuts around. What's not to love? See what the flavour's done. What's that reminding me of? Yeah. If anyone's ever put milk in lapsang souchong, this, and there is a slight orange oil kind of a thing, because when I first had it, I was like, am I getting Earl Grey? I'm getting something a little bit tea-like from this, but I was like, no, with the smoke, it's close to a lapsang. I could kind of go for a lapsang right about now, actually. I do have lapsang. What time is it? Well, maybe not. Maybe never mind. Maybe not. I do need to sleep at some point. Again, with the same with the nose, there's a freshness to it now. There's a green apple, eucalyptus kind of a thing. Getting a little bit of like a tangerine, a little bit of blueberry. It's gone a little bit fruity as well. The dairy components have kind of disappeared. The smoke's still there as kind of like a through line, but it's less integrated now. It's less part of the whole, and it's kind of falling apart into different components as opposed to gelling. Still pleasant, but it's lacking integrity in the same way that it was when it was whole. There are arguments for and against adding water to whiskey. Loads of people will argue that, you know, you really need to water down your whiskey to get the majority of the flavours. For loads of whiskies, it works fine. Occasionally you get ones that just kind of fall apart a little bit. This one's kind of on the verge of doing that. It's not fallen apart, but it's clinging on in there. That having been said, it's still a very pleasant, smoky, unusually fruity experience, given we've not really had fruit up until this point, but it still reminded me of like smoked hams and cheeses, that kind of a thing. There is a little bit of like a sweet component, like a caramel kind of a thing, and then you've got like this slightly weird apples and blueberries thing coming in towards the end, and the smoke doesn't really know what to do with those, and it's kind of like dodging on. It's difficult to describe, but yeah, once the fruit elements of it come through, it's like the smoke doesn't quite know where to look, is the best way I can think to describe it. I know I personify these things way too much sometimes, but hey. But it's nice. So if that's all you needed to know about a whiskey that maybe you can still get your hands on, I don't know, then there you have it. It's nice. And if you're a fan of smoke, you can do a lot worse. Comment down below, what do you think of Glenturret? Do you know what the deal with the date discrepancies are? Have you tried the latest 2021 release? Do you miss old Glenturret? Do you think it's in a better place now? Let me know all these things and more down in the comments down below. Thumb this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see a man talking nonsense about tasting notes. Because sometimes I don't believe me either. But for now though, thank you very much for joining me, and do join me next time where I'll be drinking something else.